When the narcissist falls, you shine, transforming from victim to a victory of complete peace. If you've ever endured the presence of a narcissist, whether a parent, sibling, family member, or romantic partner, you already know something profound. What you experienced was far from normal. This was manipulation, calculated, relentless, and designed to dismantle you. Psychologists often frame it as psychological warfare, even spiritual assault, aimed not just at your behavior but at your very sense of self. It's a targeting of mind, body, and soul, a systematic effort to destabilize and dominate. Narcissistic abuse is, in clinical terms, crazy-making. While it's happening, you question your own reality, doubt your instincts, and feel as though your mind itself is betraying you. Every word, every glance, every demand becomes a battlefield, seeping into your inner life, eroding your confidence, your perception, your identity. But psychologists stress one critical truth. The version of yourself trapped in that cycle was not the whole of who you are. That person, the one navigating constant deception, subtle sabotage, and emotional manipulation, was necessarily blind. Blindness was survival. To endure, you had to shield yourself from seeing the full, horrifying intentions of someone who claimed care but thrived on control. You had to navigate, survive, and endure while every boundary, every certainty, every ounce of self-trust was questioned and undermined. And yet, through this crucible, you survived. Now, turn and look at who you are. The person who endured is no longer the person who exists today. You are awake. You are aware. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the profound evolution that occurs when trauma is processed and integrated, when lessons are internalized and resilience is forged. You have emerged with clarity, able to perceive patterns and motives, to recognize manipulations before they take root. Where once you questioned every thought and doubted every feeling, now you see with unflinching insight. And that awakening, that revelation of self, that recognition of truth, is terrifying to the narcissist who believed they could control you completely. They watch, and they are shaken. Every glance at your thriving, independent life is a blow to their fragile ego. Psychologists refer to this as narcissistic astonishment, the shock, rage, and terror a narcissist experiences when their control fails and their target not only survives but flourishes. They cannot comprehend it. In their minds, you were supposed to be broken, lost, tethered to their whims. Instead, you are thriving. You are growing. You are living on your own terms. And that realization, that they no longer wield power over you, triggers confusion, frustration, and a simmering, silent fury that they cannot reconcile. During the abuse, they demanded absolute control. Psychologists explain that narcissists thrive on dominance because their fragile self-worth is entirely dependent on external validation and the subjugation of others. They needed you dependent on them, tethered to their moods, their whims, their illusions. Every step you took, every thought you had, every relationship you formed was meant to be filtered through their approval. They sought to own not just your actions, but your mind, your emotions, and even your spirit. But when you finally walked away, when you severed ties, when you refused to perform the role of the obedient puppet any longer, it wasn't just a loss of control. They experienced humiliation at the deepest level. Psychologists describe this as a narcissistic collapse, the psychological unraveling that occurs when their carefully constructed identity, rooted in dominance and manipulation, fails spectacularly. Your awakening, your freedom, became a mirror reflecting all the mastery, influence, and power they could never achieve for themselves, and that reflection is unbearable for someone whose self-concept is entirely externalized. Narcissistic abuse leaves lasting marks, and psychologists are clear. Trauma is not just an event, it is an imprint. It embeds itself into your body, your thoughts, your behaviors, and your relationships, altering how you perceive the world and yourself. Healing from this abuse is not merely about surviving day to day. It is about awakening, reclaiming agency, and reconstructing your identity. True post-abuse growth is recognizing that each manipulation, each act of cruelty, and each cycle of control was designed to create a version of you that was small, dependent, and fearful. And yet, paradoxically, it failed. The trauma, while painful, became the forge in which your resilience, self-awareness, and power were tempered. Psychologists highlight this as a transformative process. The very mechanisms intended to weaken you instead catalyze your emergence into an unshakable, empowered self. Every scar is evidence of both the battle you survived and the awakening that now defines you. Now, when they look at you, the shock is palpable. Psychologists describe this as the narcissistic astonishment, the cognitive and emotional dissonance a narcissist experiences when their former source of control is untouchable. They see someone unbothered, someone autonomous, someone thriving, and it terrifies them because they no longer hold the reins of your energy. They cannot manipulate your perception, intimidate your spirit, or intrude on your peace. Your detachment becomes a form of silent victory, a living proof that their power was never inherent, but borrowed from your compliance. And that terrifies them because they are forced to confront the truth of their inadequacy. To the narcissist, your growth is incomprehensible. They cannot grasp that the person they once dominated could evolve, thrive, and transcend the cycles of manipulation that defined their shared history. You are no longer merely surviving, you are thriving. Psychologists point out that post-traumatic growth occurs when survivors of abuse integrate their experiences into a new understanding of self and the world. You now see with clarity what was once obscured by fear, confusion, and manipulation. You recognize patterns, discern intentions, and navigate life from a place of conscious power. Your healing is no longer reactive, it is proactive. Every day, you reclaim fragments of your identity, your confidence, and your energy that were once siphoned by the narcissist. And in doing so, you demonstrate the ultimate paradox to them. The very abuse designed to destroy you has instead created a being they cannot touch, a self that is vibrant, self-possessed, and unassailable. Trauma is not simply a memory, it is a living, breathing imprint. Psychologists describe trauma as an embodied experience, one that can manifest in sleep disturbances, chronic anxiety, or hypervigilance. You may find yourself oversleeping to escape, or lying awake haunted by echoes of the past. Your body may remember before your mind fully does. Yet, every anxious heartbeat, every restless night, is also an opportunity for awareness and recovery. Therapeutic strategies, such as somatic therapy, mindfulness, and cognitive restructuring, are designed to help survivors reconnect with their bodies, retrain their responses, and reclaim the sense of safety and autonomy that narcissistic abuse attempted to obliterate. Through intentional healing, the memories of manipulation transform from shackles into lessons, reminders of how resilient, insightful, and powerful you have become. Trauma doesn't announce itself politely, it arrives in waves, unbidden, sweeping over you like cold, relentless tides. Psychologists explain that these are not just emotional reactions. They are the body and mind replaying the abuse, a phenomenon known as trauma memory. You might feel a sudden heaviness, an inexplicable sadness, or a creeping sense of fatigue that has nothing to do with your physical exertion but everything to do with what you endured. Triggers, no matter how small, a tone of voice, a place, a smell, can send you spiraling back into moments you thought you'd left behind. This is the remnant of the abuse, a lingering imprint, evidence of the methodical psychological warfare you survived. Narcissists take their time dismantling a person, subtly chipping away at confidence, identity, and autonomy. Their aim is total domination, to leave you dependent, exhausted, and questioning the very reality of your existence. Yet here is the source of their deepest fear. You are no longer that version of yourself. The self they tried to break, to mold, to control, no longer exists. Psychologists describe the moment a survivor begins to fully feel their emotions, anger, grief, sadness, joy, liberation, as a powerful act of autonomy. Narcissists are terrified of this because it signals the collapse of their control. Every emotion you allow yourself to experience without apology or guilt is a declaration of independence, a living proof that their manipulation failed. This is why your emotional freedom is so unnerving to them. It demonstrates that the human spirit they sought to dominate cannot be contained. The old you had to bury feelings just to survive. You were conditioned to internalize blame, to absorb their chaos, to silence your instincts and deny your pain. Psychologists define this as crazy-making abuse, a strategy designed to make you question your reality, to convince you that your emotions, perceptions, and natural instincts were wrong. The narcissist depended on your self-doubt, on your uncertainty, because it reinforced their sense of control. The tragedy of this manipulation is that it taught you to disconnect from yourself. The triumph, however, is that you are now reclaiming those emotions. By embracing the very feelings they tried to suppress, you are asserting your identity, reclaiming your humanity, and dismantling the power they once held over you. This is a fundamental shift from victimhood to empowerment, a transformation that terrifies the narcissist because it cannot be undone. The new you doesn't perform for anyone. Psychologists refer to this phase as a critical stage in post-traumatic growth, the conscious rejection of external validation imposed through abuse. You no longer measure your worth against their judgment, nor do you live in fear of gossip, comparison, or manipulation. You live authentically, scars and all, fully engaging with your own life. You invest in your growth, your learning, your health, and your purpose. Every decision, every action, is informed by self-awareness rather than fear. Psychologists emphasize that this is a hallmark of survivors who transform trauma into resilience, the evolution of a person who is stronger, wiser, and more empowered than before the abuse. Remember the version of yourself who existed in the narcissist's orbit, constantly monitored, endlessly compared, weighed down by their chaos, and diverted from your purpose. Psychologists explain that narcissists feed on energy, attention, and compliance. They steal joy and productivity to maintain their illusion of control. They drain not only your time but your very sense of reality, creating a labyrinth of obligations and distortions designed to keep you compliant. And yet, despite these systemic efforts to weaken you, the person you are now is awake, aware, and untethered. You are no longer a vessel for their power. You are a force of your own making, moving deliberately through the world with clarity, purpose, and resilience. They once demanded validation as if it were their birthright, extracting explanations from you that were never yours to give. They wore you down with endless questioning, accusations, and expectations until you were burnt out, hollowed from within. Psychologists describe this as emotional extraction, a manipulation tactic that drains a victim's cognitive and emotional reserves. By pushing you to over-explain and over-give, the narcissist was reinforcing a power imbalance designed to keep you in a perpetual state of exhaustion. Yet now, something profound has shifted. You've become cautious with your energy, protective of your heart, and deeply aware of the power of your emotions. You no longer overgive, over-explain, or overextend yourself. You have established boundaries that are no longer negotiable, and you recognize the sacred value of your peace. You feel no regret for walking away, no remorse for cutting them off, no shame for saying no in ways they never imagined. This refusal is not just an act of defiance but an act of healing. And in living this awakened version of yourself, you reveal to them a truth they never anticipated. You are untouchable, unbothered, and thriving. The version of you that exists today is a shock, not only to them but to your own sense of self. Psychologists would name this phenomenon an unexpected post-traumatic transformation, the emergence of a stronger, wiser identity forged in the crucible of abuse. In the narcissistic manipulationship, you were drowning in their lies, trapped in their narrative, cast as nothing more than a supporting role in their production. You weren't allowed to be the star of your own life. You weren't even granted the dignity of co-authorship. You were there to stabilize the stage, to keep the set intact, unknowingly propping up the mask they wore so convincingly. Every ounce of love, energy, and stability you poured into that relationship became a resource they used to fortify their illusion of control. Psychologists frequently emphasize that narcissists are drawn to empathetic, resourceful people for this very reason. Abundance attracts exploitation. Because you were generous, they could leech. Because you were steady, they could destabilize you without falling apart themselves. But now, the version of you they see is their nightmare made flesh. You've learned to starve them of what they crave. You've gone silent, cut off their supply, changed the locks, literally and metaphorically, reclaimed your space, and retreated into your sacred hideout. This is not cowardice. This is survival. This is strategy. Experts call this strategic detachment, the intentional withdrawal of your emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical presence to protect your well-being. It is a deliberate act of self-preservation, akin to a warrior retreating to regroup before launching a counteroffensive. Psychologists advise survivors of narcissistic abuse to adopt precisely this stance. Limit contact, hold firm boundaries, and protect your inner resources like the rare treasures they are. You have become vigilant because you have learned, through pain, that danger does not always announce itself. It can be charming, smiling, soft-spoken. It can wear a mask of love. And so you've activated your radar. You're alert. You're aware. You're awake. And this, above all, is what terrifies them now, the person you've become. You are no longer an unsuspecting participant in their games. You have developed what psychologists call hyper-empathic discernment, a sharpened ability to detect patterns of manipulation across every arena of your life, at work, in communities, in social systems, even within your own family. This is the survivor's gift, the ability to see through illusions and anticipate tactics before they unfold. Where once they thrived in the shadows of your unawareness, they now stand exposed under the bright light of your clarity. You are not just surviving. You are evolving into a vigilant, discerning, and empowered force. And that reality, your transformation, your freedom, your refusal to feed them, is the most devastating blow a narcissist can ever experience. You could practically coach someone through it. You could write an entire book detailing the storms you survived, because your lived experience carries a depth that cannot be taught, only endured. Psychologists describe this as expertise born from trauma, where survivors develop an intimate understanding of human behavior, manipulation, and resilience that surpasses ordinary learning. This is knowledge forged in fire. Every insult, every lie, every attempt to control you has been internalized, studied, and transformed into insight. And it is precisely this profound mastery of your own survival that makes you untouchable to the narcissist's tactics. They are confronted with someone who cannot be manipulated in the same ways, someone who understands their play before it even begins. That is why they are doomed. You are no longer the person who once bent, twisted, or accommodated their whims. The party is over. The script they once controlled has been torn from their hands, and you've seized the pen that was always rightfully yours, to author a story of your own making, regardless of how chaotic, messy, or painful the process may be. Psychologists identify this reclaiming of narrative as a hallmark of post-traumatic growth. A survivor not only escapes abuse but actively reconstructs identity, autonomy, and self-efficacy. By taking control of the story, you dismantle the illusion of power they held over you, leaving them powerless to rewrite your reality. Some of you have done this gently, some with force. The person you were back then was scattered, unanchored, perhaps spiritually disengaged, and not yet aligned with your inner compass. But now, you are a prayer warrior, a spiritual sentinel. Your strength radiates in subtle and overt ways. Your children witness it, those around you recognize it, and even on days when exhaustion clouds your spirit, your newfound clarity and resilience shine through. Psychologists explain that survivors who anchor themselves in purpose or spirituality develop stronger emotional regulation and resilience, creating internal structures that narcissists cannot penetrate or destabilize. You are no longer their emotional slave, their punching bag, or their unwitting participant in manipulation. You have cultivated what experts term gaslight immunity, a psychological state in which your perception of reality is anchored firmly in truth, making manipulation, projection, or deceit nearly impossible to execute against you. You are no longer prey. You are a sentinel of your own boundaries. Every attempt to pull you back into their web of deceit now fails, and this is terrifying to the narcissist because it represents the ultimate loss: their inability to control, dominate, or erode your autonomy. In this evolution, you have become a warrior in both spiritual and physical realms. Psychologists call this integration, the process by which the fragmented, broken pieces of a survivor's psyche coalesce into armor. You pour into yourself what was once drained, your energy, your love, your focus, replenishing what was stolen and fortifying what remains. You are awake to your angels, attuned to guidance, and deeply aligned with your purpose. This is no longer survival. This is mastery, an emergent state in which trauma catalyzes transformation rather than continued victimhood. And that is why they are terrified. The person they once controlled, who they believed they could dominate or destroy, now exists as someone immune to their influence. Psychologists call this post-traumatic empowerment, the point at which a survivor has shifted from vulnerability to self-sovereignty. Your attention is no longer on fixing, reconciling, or reasoning with them. It is invested fully in replenishing, restoring, and building a life that honors your growth. You are focused on the future, on abundance, fulfillment, and authentic joy, and in doing so, you embody a power that no narcissist can ever dismantle. Who you were back then carried too much of the weight of problems that weren't yours to solve, too much responsibility for emotions that weren't yours to manage. Psychologists explain that narcissistic abuse often weaponizes empathy. The very sensitivity and compassion that once made you strong became a tool for the abuser to manipulate and control. You were trained to absorb their chaos, maintain their mask, and keep the illusion intact, even as your own identity was minimized. This conditioning was insidious, leaving you constantly questioning your worth, your instincts, and your right to prioritize yourself. But the person you are now is unrecognizable to them, and to the old version of yourself. You are unbothered, rooted in awareness, and firmly aligned with your own needs. Your focus has shifted inward, to your spiritual growth, your emotional and physical health, and your awakening to self-worth. Psychologists note that this shift reflects the establishment of healthy boundaries, a critical step for survivors reclaiming power after chronic manipulation. You now recognize that self-care is not selfish. It is essential, a form of resistance against the conditioning that once demanded your energy be poured into others at the expense of your own well-being. Low vibrational energy, manipulation, or disrespect no longer finds a home within you. The new you exudes confidence, centeredness, and an unapologetic acknowledgement of your value. This is not arrogance, it is self-recognition and reclamation. Psychologists highlight that survivors of narcissistic abuse must reconstruct a sense of self-worth that was systematically eroded, and part of that healing is the ability to assert your value without guilt or fear. You were always the prize, the one deserving of respect, care, and recognition, and now you embrace that fully. You speak your truth openly, reclaiming the voice that was once silenced. This expression is a critical element of post-traumatic growth, allowing the survivor to externalize strength and cement the boundaries that protect their autonomy. Before, you were muted. Your thoughts, feelings, and desires were suppressed by manipulation and control. Now, you thrive independently, proving to yourself, not to them, that their power over you has dissipated. You move differently, think differently, breathe differently. Psychologists describe this as the embodiment of healing. When the survivor's nervous system and sense of agency recalibrate, even mundane actions, sleeping peacefully, walking confidently, speaking openly, become markers of liberation. That peace, once impossible, is now your default. This transformation is a living testament to your resilience, your awakening, and your power. Psychologists remind us that healing is rarely linear. It comes in waves, in relapses and breakthroughs, but when fully embraced, it becomes reclamation, a conscious restoration of your life, your energy, and your voice. Every boundary set, every moment of self-prioritization, is a victory against the control and chaos that once dominated your existence. I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Speak your experiences, your lessons, and your triumphs. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. All the information on how to reach me, work with me, or connect is in the description box below. Until next time, beautiful people, keep thriving, keep evolving, and keep shining. You've endured, you've awakened, and you've earned every ounce of your peace and power.